All right, guys. So what I have right here on the screen, right, is an example of what we're going for. Okay. So I have a number of layers right here on the right, and this is actually what we were doing in class, last class, right? You guys were doing with tracing paper, outlining the layers by hand. Well, I want to show you guys how we can do that digitally and how much it can help you actually, model and plan ahead for your actual model, right? So we're 3D modeling so that you can generate your physical model. Okay, and if I turn off the image layer that I have right here, you can start seeing that we're breaking down, right, the image by the layers. And this actually can be a really good exercise for you, right, in terms of planning the layers, right? Okay, so do I have the right layers? Do I have enough layers? And do I know what they are, right? So this is what I want to walk you guys through how to set up. Okay, so I'm going to open up a new Rhino file, right, just as you would do, right, in order to start a new file. Okay, the first thing that we actually want to set up, the first thing that we actually want to check, and I mentioned this in other classes, right? What is the first thing that we want to check for? What was that? Was that Speedy? Units, right? Correct. So I want to type units, enter. And so let's be working on the one-to-one, right? Meaning that we're actually going to 3D model this as it will be physically modeled, right? Created or constructed physically. So I type in units, enter. Okay. And then on this drop-down menu, we have all of our units. So I'm going to click on inches. Okay. And again, for this, for actually in general, just make sure that distance display is also in feet and inches, right? So units, inches, and distance display, feet and inches. And remember, later on, working on different projects, such as your studio projects, you might actually bring these units to feet, right? Just right now, for us, inches would work best. So while we're on this option window right here, there's the appearance setting right here. I get asked about my background. Why is it not gray like yours? There's this colors tab right here, and there's this background tab right here, and you can select any background, right? Any background color, right? So white helps me. Whatever helps you. Maybe it'll be the gray, or I know some people actually like either a darker gray or a black, kind of like AutoCAD. So I'll just hit OK. Okay. So we should be now on our working units, which are inches. We're going to be working on this from the front view. Okay, we're going to be looking at this from the front view. So I'm going to maximize the front viewport. Okay. Now we want to import our photograph into Rhino. Anyone remembers how we can do that? Picture, right? Easy, right? So we want to bring in a picture. Well, we type in picture, right? Picture, enter. And we have to find the file either locally or on a thumb drive that is plugged into your machine. But in this case, I just went ahead and downloaded this example online, which reminds me kind of, one of your classmates from the morning. Colleen had something similar. So for right now, I'm just gonna, it's asking me, right, specify other corner. For right now, I'm just gonna click and click, right, so that I import the image. Okay, so good. Now let's look into our layers. If you double clicked on the Rhino icon, you should have the default file, which come with the default layers that you see listed right here to the right. Those are going to become handy, right? So as you see right now, the image, right? So I click on the image, I can drag it, right? But if I look downwards, if you follow my cursor, maybe change this right here. If you follow my cursor, oops, right, on this area right here, it tells me what layer objects are in. Okay, so if I select the object right there, it tells me that it's on the default layer. Okay, right there. So I'm going to leave it on that layer. However, I'm going to rename it, right? How do I do that? Double click, right? soft double click on that name. I'm gonna rename it IMG. Let's call it image. That's the original image. And again, don't worry about following me right now. Some of you guys are already familiar with this method, and you're taking media and you know what we're doing. But there might be some things here and there that, okay, wait. So again, if things work right, I am recording this. Yes, I am recording this, and I'll be able to upload it. Okay, so we have that right there. Now I want to draw now the area of my project, right? How big are these projects going to be? The final one, 11 by 17. All right. So I'm going to do a rectangle. Okay. So I type rec, right? REC for rectangle, and you see that the software auto completes the word for me, right? So hey, it seems that you're looking for rectangle, right? Yes, I am. So I hit enter. Right, so I do a left click to specify the first corner. Right, notice that I can freeform a rectangle. Or what we actually want to do is we want to specify the dimensions of such rectangle. And I have written right here on the board, right, the way that we do that. So we type rectangle, enter, right, and then it's asking us for the first point. So I specify the first point. Now on my command line, which is this top portion over here, I'm going to enter this, the add sign, right? 17 inches, comma 11 inches, and that actually helps me draw a rectangle that is those dimensions, right? So I type add 17, and this is width first and then height second. So that's why 17 is first, right? We specify the width, right, and then the height. Or actually, in some of your guys' cases, might be inverse, right? If you're working with portrait, okay. So in my case, it's landscape. So add 17 inches. The inches sign being the quote marks, the quotation marks. Since we already specified our units to be inches, we don't really need to include them technically, but I like to do so because I like to make sure that, again, it is what it should be, right? Later on, we start mixing feet with inches, so I got to the habit of always incorporating them. So 17 inches, comma 11 inches, enter, and that gives me this box right here. Okay. Now I want to double check my steps, so I'm going to type DIS for distance. We're going to be working with the object snap on, so we got to make sure that this setting right here, O snap, is on, and that end is on as well, right? So I measure right from this corner to this corner, right, end to end, and the distance, it says 1 foot and 5 inches. Okay, how many inches in a foot? Plus 5. Are we good? We good. Okay, right, so we are good. I'm going to right click to repeat that, and I'm just for fun, I'm going to check the height, right? So that should be 11 inches, and we get distance 11 inches. And I know it's really hard to see my command line right there from the back, but again, hopefully seeing it on your screen will be easier. Okay, so I have an image on my screen, and I have the surface area which will represent your final physical model. Okay, now I'm going to start working with my layers, and this first layer, layer 101, I'm going to rename it, I'm going to call it 17 by 11, because that's going to be my frame, which is this thing that I just drew right here, this rectangle. Okay, so again, I want to switch its layer, right? So I select the object, I come down to this drop down menu, and I click on the red, right? And if I did things correctly, once I click out of here, click, now the rectangle is red, which matches the 11 by 17 or 17 by 11 layer. Good so far? Yeah? Yeah? All right, good. So now what I want to do is I want to move, right? So I type move, right? Move, enter, or space bar. Move the rectangle that I created from that corner and place it on this lower left corner of the photograph for them to be matching. Okay? Now I want to scale this image to make it fit my area of the rectangle. Okay? So this is called scaling, but it's a special kind of scale. This is scale by a reference, or scaling with the reference. Okay? So I type scale, enter. Now it is asking me, right, select the object to scale. Well, I want to scale the photograph, right? So press enter when done. So I'm going to right click to enter. Now the command is still active, right? Base point, period, press enter for automatic. We do have a base point, right? Which one would be my base point? The first corner, right? Correct, right? The bottom left corner, this one right here, it's the corner that they're both sharing, right? Both the reference rectangle and the image are sharing that corner. And again, think of this corner as something that is static, right? You put a pin on it and that thing is not going to move, right? Because we're going to change the size of this, but everything is going to be scaled relative to that point, okay? So I do my first click, right? So I'm going to click. And my command line changes, right? Scale factor or first reference point. So a scale factor, right? Simple, right? So if I specify a scale factor of 2, right? Things are going to be 2 times as big. If I specify a reference factor of 0.5, they're going to be half as big. However, right? How many times do I need to decrease this image, right, in order to fit here? I don't know for sure. Right? If I press 0.5, enter, right? It got smaller, 50% smaller, but still, right? There's still plenty of images outside of it. And that's why actually scaling with the reference is very useful, right? Because when we don't know the scale factor, we can actually ask Rhino to find it for us, right? So again, select image, the first point. Now, the second reference point would be the opposite end. Okay, so I click there. Now notice how now the image is locked and it moves according to my cursor, right? So if I now snap to this other end, right, I have an image that is exactly 17 inches wide. Now, what is the problem though that I see here now on my surface area? There's a space, right? Which would mean what for my final project? It's a different size, right? It's smaller, right? So I would either have blank, maybe just a piece of cardboard right there, just no photograph right there, or even worse, well, I don't know which one's worse, to be honest with you, or I'll just have a different dimension, right? You have a project that is not 11 inches high, maybe 9 inches or so, okay? So what it means is that I need to scale this again. So I right click to scale it, but I actually need to go by or obey my height rather than my width. Okay, so I'll show you what that means. I'm going to scale it again from that point to this point, right, so that it matches that, meaning the parts of the components of the photograph are going to have to be cropped. Right? So rather than having blank space on my project area, I am going to get rid of image space. And that is actually important to know how much of that you will have to get rid of, because there was an example in the morning where you guys can see there's these guys battling right here, right? And Marco was showing me is like, hey, just like my second guy, right, it doesn't make it. They're like, oh well, I mean, I guess that's what we're learning from this, that right, whenever you take this photograph again, we're gonna actually send them in closer to the center, right? Because you're either gonna have to crop that guy out or crop that guy out, right? Or worst case scenario, just have like an arm and an arm of each, right? So that's also important to know. Now, the ratios of your photograph shouldn't change at all if you're using your same phone, right? So the image that you will get right now as you work on this exercise, however you have to scale it up or down, it should work pretty much the same, right? But I guess to be safe, let's just don't depend too much on what happens on the margins. And again, you'll see it working on your exercise right now. Be like, oh yeah, right, I mean that gets cropped out. Okay. Now what I can do though is decide how much gets cropped out from where. Right. So for example, here I can use my gumball, right, and I can move that right here. And again, you know, let's say going with my theme for this photograph, something very sacred or very geometric, right? Kind of like this Hindu goddess or god, you know, kind of like going on right there. So I want it to be dead on center, right? So I can maybe, you know, try cropping, you know, a piece from both ends right there, right? Rather than actually sending it to, you know, one of the ends right there and not being balanced. Okay, so I'm going to do that. Remember, don't do what I did, just drag it like that. Use the gumball, right, so that it's actually aligned, right? So it actually keeps that alignment. Okay, so good. I have an image, I have a layer which is 17 by 11. Now I'm ready to draw, right? We're going to draw, and there's two commands that I can see being used for this. I mean, more, definitely more, but one of them is called Polyline. Now Polyline makes a polygonal string of lines, continuous. Okay, so again, Alfonso, I was talking about, I was like, oh guys, you know, I'm just going for polygonal objects, you know, very geometric ones. This would be the kind of tool to use for that, right? So again, if you see from my screen right here, it creates this sort of line, right? But there's no curves on it. You can get curves, right, but just how close together they are and how continuous, you know, you get that, right? But right, again, from a distance, it looks like, oh, that's a curve right there. But again, these are actually tiny little line segments that create that effect of a curve. Okay, so that was what command? Polyline. Right, now if what we actually want to trace is very organic, right, meaning, you know, curves. We actually want to do an ISO curve, right? So we type ISO. Wait, what's it ISO? Hold on, guys. Interpolate. I'm sorry. Interpolate, right? And the command would be INTERP CRV for curve. Interpolate curve. Interpolate curve. It works the same way, right? I drop anchor points, but these are now curvilinear segments. Okay, so I exit. Now we want to be able to see what we're drawing, right? Because we're actually going to trace on top of the image. Okay, so we should actually, before we even continue, turn down the opacity of this image, right? So that we can actually trace on top of it. Okay, so the way that we do that, and we select the photograph, we come right here to the right side of our screen. There's this paint tube, right? That if you place your cursor on top of it, it should say material. Okay, we click on that, and again, I'm going to expand this a little bit so you see it better on my screen. Right, if we scroll down. I'm going to scroll down here. Oops, let me get this out of the way. Oh, I'm already scrolled all the way down. So it's under picture, and then there's this trans scale. Right, so we actually move that. That changes our what? Transparency, aka opacity. Right, so transparency. I think Illustrator might call it opacity. Here's the transparency. All right, so that's going to help us, right? Help us draw. Now, something that is good. So I'm going to go back to my layers, right? Something that is also, oops, layers. Layers is that slice of cake or earth, as you want to see it. Something else that is going to help me see what I'm drawing better is colors. Okay, so I am going to lock. Right, so I'm going to make active first, right, one of these other layers, and I do that by clicking on this arrow, right, or the space where that arrow would be. So you cannot lock a current layer, right? So I need to be on one of these other layers because I want to lock 17 by 11. So I lock it, and I want to lock my IMG. right? That means I cannot move them anymore. It's kind of like you were taping them on your desk. You're taping them to your surface area. Okay. Now I'm ready to trace. Now I'm gonna rename these layers, right? I'm gonna say this is L1. Whoops. Right. L1. I'm gonna give this a color. I say I start over here. Right. Right. And I can start. I'm just going to go around the. Let's create some sort of a rainbow pattern. Right. So I'll just go around the rainbow. Right. So layer 2 is gonna get that purple. Right. Maybe this one is gonna get some blue hues right there, a little bit brighter. Right, and then I keep going, right? This may be teal or lighter blue, right? So we create this rainbow pattern right here, and of course, how many layers, how many L layers are we gonna have? 10, right? So right now, just to cut on time, right? So it's gonna be L2, and I'll do 3, right? So we'll have this list, right? Right? And now I'm ready to draw. So L1 would be the object closest to me. So I type interpolate curve. That's the one that I'm going to use. And I go. So I start clicking, right? Click, click. Now let's say that you make an error, right? Like whoa, okay. And I made more than one arrow, 3, right? So I press Control Z as in zebra, and it takes me back. Okay. And again, you wanna, test your how much you need to be zoomed in there, right? In certain areas you might need to be very zoomed in, and other ones you can start kind of zooming out. Right? Start doing that, right? So I'm gonna, right click right there. So that's what I have right now. But on this other exercise, this one, right? That's how I got these layers right here. So that's what I mean with the rainbow pattern right there. Okay, that's the list right there of the layers. And for right now, I think we should have for this one. Well, no, let's start doing the 10 layers. Let's start doing the 10 layers on the second photograph because we're already moving towards the final one. There is something to talk about these areas right here where we're sharing information, because I'm going to move this out of the way, right? Just because they're overlapping, remember how we talked about fitting as a puzzle, right? They actually should notch, right, with one another, right? So that right there, I think I'm going to have to talk about it next class, right? 'Cause I think we're cutting short of time, but let's start with that. Right? Let's start with this exercise, tracing your layers all around, using tracing your layers using layers on Rhino. Okay. Questions? Yes, Karina. Yes, at least traced. I mean, tracing it. Okay. Yeah. So I like to see the beginning of it, or the beginning of the tracing of this, the second study photograph that we're doing. Yes. Yes, that's the idea, that I can upload this. Javier? Do we have to layer it as well? What was that? Do we have to layer it as well, or do we only have to trace it for this one? Just leave it flat right now. We'll talk next class what we're doing with each layer. Okay. And another question, do we have to retake the pictures for the big project again? Correct. Correct. No, that's not next class. There's the announcement right there. I'm gonna stop this right here.